Ravi, hi, welcome to Chandigarh. Looks like you've got the rain gods here as well at this time of the year. Ravi, as you know, ISB and Infosys share a very special relationship. We were neighbors in Hyderabad, and going by the distance as the crow flies, we're also neighbors here in Mohali and Chandigarh as well. And also, one of your founder, Mr. Narayan Murthy, is also one of the founders of ISB as well. So, in some sense, our relationship and our partnership, in some sense, precedes to that extent. I want to sort of, first of all, thank you for this wonderful opportunity to be in conversation with you, and want to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
But if you have any remarks at this point of time, or else I can start off with the questions that I want to ask.
Well, thanks, Guru. I think ISB is such a fascinating business school, very contemporary, next generation in many ways. And I thoroughly enjoyed being associated with it in some form or the other when I was a part of the Hyderabad Center.
Thank you. So let me ask, I have a few questions for you, and I'll sort of start with the first one. So we live in the age of digital disruption.
Right.
And we live in an era where a lot of things are getting disrupted all around. And you are one of those who are pioneering this localization strategy within Infosys, right?
Right.
How is it? Can you explain that for us a little bit? And also, how have your clients taken to that, and what is their response?
Yeah. So Guru, literally 3 or 4 years ago, we kind of started this journey of transitioning from a hub and spoke talent model, which was apt and continues to remain apt for traditional tech services which are executed in an on-site offshore model. And we were a pioneer of that for decades, and we said we should be a pioneer for creating an operating and a talent model for digital services as well. So this was an attempt for us to create a distributed talent pool from a hub and spoke, where you could create local talent pools which are amplified by the global talent pools Infosys is very good at. So our endeavor was to take the strength of Infosys, which is about learning and education and training, and create these talent pools in the local markets we represent. And the United States was one of our biggest principal markets where we started this journey. So this is a dichotomy of sorts. On one side, you do extreme offshoring on traditional services, take value out of it. And on the other side, you do distributed agile teams, which can co-innovate, co-create alongside your clients, but they do it in an agile, distributed way. So we're creating this academic partnerships in the US, which will help us to build these talent pools from schools and colleges, which is what we did for almost 3 decades in India. And in partnership with these colleges, we're building this curriculum, developing this talent, and then we're making them ready for production grade digital services, as I call them. So that's broadly been our journey. And we're back in India, we've mastered this art of doing it with STEM talent. And now we think the future of digital services, both in India as well as in our local talent pools we're building in the markets, we're going to progress into a very diverse set, from STEM to liberal arts to design. And we think that spectrum is needed for you to get the value from digital services, because technology is by itself very important, but application of the technology it has a much bigger virtue and a much bigger value. So we've just kind of now started to master this art of going beyond STEM to non-STEM disciplines as well.
Sort of unleashed a new path, so to speak.
Unleashed a new path. So we have these partnerships with the Trinity College for liberal arts. We have a partnership with the Rhode Island School of Design for design.
I remember hearing about that in your interview with the governor of Rhode Island.
Absolutely. Yeah, so and we're creating these nearshoring hubs. We've put 6 of them. So very, very excited about redefining the future of work and workplaces and workforce.
How have your clients reacted to this?
Very, very positively. What has happened with our clients is our clients are seeing the best of 2 worlds come to them. On one side, we've been the pioneer and the evangelist for offshoring. On the other side, counterintuitively, we are building talent closer to the clients so that they could co-innovate and co-create and do it in an agile way. Clients today want to actually rapidly deploy rapidly deliver to needs in the market, and be those sentient enterprises we call, which are reacting to real-time situations. And that is what new age digitally native companies do. New age digitally native companies are real-time transient, sentient enterprises. And clients want to be that. And if you want to consume technology that way, you need to actually build these agile distributed talent pools. So clients are loving this whole fact that we're bringing these two worlds parallelly to them.
Sort of the best of both worlds.
The best of both worlds parallel to them.
Great. I keep seeing your Trailblazers sort of talk series that you have,
right.
and I watched a few episodes. I sort of admire the way in which you sort of interact and talk to these sort of heads of governments, heads of corporations, and ask them some very incisive questions. I sort of very few leaders that I know of can do that with ease and spontaneity like the way you do, and sort of I want to compliment you on that.
Thank you for that.
I also want to ask you, given the kind of large number of people who you have met and asked these sort of questions in a very deep but also spontaneous manner, there must be some things that are commonly coming out of these
of course.
Sort of, interviews that you do.
Yeah.
In particular, given the kind of environment and the conversation that we are having, I'm sort of keen to know what are some of the key points that have come from these conversations around skilling, future of workforce, and broadly around talent, if I can sort of say so.
Yeah. I've loved the Trailblazer series because it was an opportunity for me to build hypothesis, validate my hypothesis, and sometimes build a provocation around it. I love the fact that I get to meet these extraordinary individuals who made impact in the industries and the societies they represent.
Sure.
And that allows me to curate that knowledge and cross-tabulate it across industries so that you could bring this blurring lines between industries to the fore. All large enterprises across the world are struggling on repurposing their human capital and repurposing their financial capital for digitizing their landscapes. So if any of the large enterprises which are paranoid about digitally native companies, if they're looking at two things, they're looking at, can I get financial capital from my operations and seamlessly move it to the new digital world, and can I digitize the landscape? I think many have cracked that problem. Very few have cracked the problem of human capital. If at all there is a constraint of digitizing your operations, I think it is all about human capital. And the ability to reskill, the ability to redeploy and refactor talent, I think is going to be the single biggest challenge for large enterprises. Large enterprises have this burden. They have this burden of taking the legacy and repurposing it. They're not born digital. When you're born digital, it's very easy because you have no legacy. You just have to deal with the future. You take a leap on it. When you are actually a legacy player, you're worried about the legacy, you're worried about quarterly results, you're worried about current human capital, you're worried about current operations, and simultaneously you're worried about how you are repurposing for the future. I think that is the single biggest challenge I actually see most CEOs across industries are struggling with, and that's one of my favorite topics of conversation, if you've noticed, which is all about how do you build this future human capital which stays relevant to the age we are in. Remember, we are all wired in a very different way. We are wired as individuals. I'll give you a few examples. We are wired as individuals who have, I was talking to some of the friends we refer to at Wharton on how the entire education system has built professionals like us, which have built their entire model of absorbing knowledge in a model of just in case, as I call it, because what you're taught in schools is just in case something is needed in your life, you would use it. So you kind of told everything up front, and then for the next 50 or 60 years, just in case something is useful, you have to index it. You're moving from that world, from just in case to just in time. which means just in time somebody is going to impart knowledge. You have to absorb it and apply it to your jobs. So that transition from just in case to just in time, you need to be a lifelong learner.
True.
Lifelong learning will put you in a continuum that you should be able to absorb just in time and then apply it to your jobs and constantly iterate from there. So that's a huge shift in the way education systems have been built, in the way learning has been built, in the way you will have to apply to your job. And I don't think we are wired that way. And I personally believe that's a big shift. The second big shift is professionals in workplaces are wired to solve problems. And all of what we are taught is to solve problems. Professionals in the future will be wired to find problems, and machines will solve problems. So the switch to creative jobs, because you're finding problems, is a big switch. So you're switching from analytical skills applied to a job to creative skills applied to a job. So you're moving from this paradigm of problem solving to the paradigm of problem finding. So these are things CEOs are grappling with, and these are the things which I think there is a commonality of purpose of solving those problems.
Excellent. And speaking of sort of commonality of purpose, and a couple of other points that you mentioned sort of makes me ask this next question, which is you mentioned legacy, and you mentioned sort of repurposing human capital as a sort of major challenge that you find across. So I'm sort of tempted to sort of come to a milestone, which is 2021. Infosys will be 40 years.
Right.
ISB will be 20 years. Sort of we are half your age as an organization. If as a senior leader, not just of Infosys, but looking at sort of tying up academic alliances, for this digital era and for all the reasons that you mentioned, what sort of a template or a blueprint would you prescribe that sort of would enable, let's say, an ISB and Infosys work more closer, right? I mean, a lot of our alumni work at Infosys, we do a few things together, but there's so much more that one can do.
Right.
But I would also sort of expand this a little bit and say that, maybe in some sense sort of ask you to sort of, share with us a template that you've had for this larger industry institute integration, right?
Right.
In that sense,
that's a great question actually, and I have a couple of important things to speak about. I think first of all, academic institutions and universities have never been paranoid about disruption, and their own space has not been disrupted enough for them to be paranoid enough. You have new age, micro modular university curriculums like Coursera, Udacity, and companies of that kind, but they have not actually created a formidable challenge to large academic institutions yet. Yeah. So I think that switch is going to happen where some universities will pivot themselves into this new digital learning companies, and that lines will blur. So that's one big shift I would say. The second big shift is academic institutions have been very B2C. They directly go to students, and their entire business model is about a B2C model. Yeah. I think the shift will happen to B2B. Most university presidents I meet say that their single biggest shift they're worried about is the shift from B2C to B2B. That shift will be substantial change in the operating model of large universities and academic institutions. And why is that shift needed? The shift is needed because reskilling is such a big task that corporations can't do it themselves. Lifelong learning, reskilling, that iterative process is such a huge task that corporations have to partner with academic institutions. And to me, today the entire operating model of universities and traditional academic institutions is so tuned to address a student rather than addressing an employee of an enterprise. but the onus of reskilling will be a combined effort between the employee and the employer, and hence academic institutions have to work jointly with large enterprises to bridge that gap. The third piece I would say, which has changed significantly, most of the academic and corporate partnerships were driven at a time when the industries were not changing at such rapid pace. So in some sense, corporations used to reach out to universities, and at ease they did R&D work, which did not have this paranoia or this time crunch or an urgency of sorts. But with the rapid pace at which industry is getting disrupted, academia has to do the reach out to large enterprises for disruption, and that is going to be the other way around. In the past it used to be corporations going to academic institutions and preparing for a foreseeable change in the future. But now they're going to come with a sense of paranoia, saying it's happening now. How do we address it? And that's a very different kind of a need, which universities have to deal with. So quite a bit, I think, in the space of education and the space of learning, this is going to significantly shift.
I want to ask you on this one a little further, is that there is a need that is recognized on both sides for greater sort of interaction and integration, but there seems to be some sort of inhibition, or we've done our bit, let the other side come forward. So what's your solution? Because you've created some successes on sort of whether it is to a university president or to a CEO of a corporation. What would be your advice?
So here is my advice, right? I have like actively 7 or 8 partnerships with universities in the US. All of them, when they reach out to me, they think we're going to do joint R&D with them, or we're going to do joint, we're going to hire from those colleges, and that will be the kind of partnership. But I always tell them, look, if you're looking for a lot of joint innovation to be done, I think you're going to get much better value if you go to traditional industry enterprises.
Sure.
Consulting firms like us, I think the need of the hour today is reskilling and capability building. And if you can pivot in that direction, this relationship could go multifold in terms of value on both sides. And that has changed the paradigm of how we have seen our relationships. So our relationships today is all about how do we make reskilling, not just for us, but also for our customers' employees, and do it in partnership with universities. And that's a huge new stream of value which you can get from academic institutions. It is very different. Tomorrow if I tell you that let ISB and Infosys work on building cyber security talent, you are directly working on my operating model of building capabilities and capacity for the future for a new age digital technology. It's going to be a disruptive. I'm just throwing an example at it. So it's a very different thing to how we looked at academic partnerships.
Brilliant. This is sort of again legacy issue, and I want to ask this question. 2021, Infosys at 40. What excites you the most as the president of Infosys about the future for the organization?
I've been in this industry for 20 plus years. I think these are unprecedented times for the adoption of technology into the core operations of every large enterprise in the world. That Infosys could be that orchestrator, and that's a white space. Infosys could be that orchestrator to help these enterprises adapt these cutting edge technologies, because they are so paranoid about digitally native firms. Digitally native firms are coming behind their lunch. So they're so paranoid that we could be that partner of choice for them to make that shift and make the transition. And the need of the hour is no longer about just adopting the technologies and lending our human capital. This is what we did for a living. We lent our human capital to support transformational journey of large enterprises. Our future will not just be about lending our human capital. Our future will also be about lending the value chain of your human capital. A lot of my clients today tell me that technology is so strategic, we are not going to outsource it.
Yeah.
We're going to insource it. Counterintuitively, I think that's a bigger opportunity for me. I'm not going to lend the human capital. I'm going to lend the value chain of human capital.
And as you said, you'll co-create it.
I will co-create it with them. So there are clients who've come back and told me, I'm going to insource all my talent. Can you help reskill it? It's the right thing for them. And I think that opportunity is much bigger than lending my human capital to support them.
It's a long-term.
It's a very different kind of a perspective. So I would say the shift we will all see is lending human capital to lending the value chain of human capital.
Excellent.
And that shift will be a much bigger opportunity for companies like Infosys if we tap onto it very early.
Which I'm sure you will. So thank you very much. I want to sort of end this conversation with what I would normally call a rapid fire, but I think in your case we should call it Trailblazer round. So these are questions that have been sort of crowdsourced from your colleagues.
Sure.
So given their quality, you should expect them to be tough. But also the other side is that there's no gift hamper. But you should still answer these questions. So I have 5 questions for you.
Sure.
Rapid fire. Experience or fresh talent?
Fresh talent.
Global or local?
That's a tough one. I think they coexist.
Passion or skill?
Always passion.
Bollywood or Hollywood?
Always Bollywood.
Okay, and the last one, Gachibowli or Manhattan?
I have a recency effect in my life. If you had asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have said always Gachibowli.
Yeah.
Now I would say always Manhattan. If I spend a few more hours in Chandigarh, I would say always Chandigarh.
This is the city beautiful, so you must say that. So, but Ravi, it's been such a pleasure talking with you, and thank you so much for all the insights in this very short time that we had. Really appreciate it, and thank you for your sort of you and Infosys have been great partners and support to ISB, and we look forward to sort of that continuing partnership. And we should have you on our campus soon.
Sure, thank you so much. I always love being at ISB campus. It's such a enterprising business school. One of the most dynamic business schools in India.
Thank you.
So thank you for all your leadership. I know you for many years, and I've seen you in that campus, and I'm assuming you're applying your magic in Mohali as well.
There's the ISB magic, which,
thank
like
you again.
You said, there's a lot of commonalities between the two of us.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.